Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our weekly webinar. Innovative Business Advisors is pleased to welcome you again today. And for many of you who join us on a regular basis, you pretty much know the routine, but I will go over the logistics for the webinar again today. We're using a Zoom portal today for our webinar, and I want to make sure that you understand how we conduct the webinar and what you will receive after the webinar in terms of follow-up information. We are recording the webinar in Zoom, and we will have available to you after the webinar a recording of the webinar, along with any charts that we use throughout the webinar today, and we'll have a transcript of the Q&A. Q&A, though, we need to ensure that if you have questions, you will see on your Zoom portal a Q&A dialogue at the very bottom. Click on that Q&A dialogue and type your question into the Q&A dialogue. I will follow those questions and I will pose them to our panelists today. And we will create, after this webinar, we will create a transcript of the questions and the answers for you. Everything will be available post-webinar via our YouTube channel, which will have links to our Google Docs site where all information will be available. So with that said, let's go ahead and move into the subject of today's webinar. We have three panelists today, myself, Steve Denny, and Sam Naes. Steve will give us a brief update on CARES Act and changes that we are aware of following or since our last webinar last week. Then we'll quickly move into a conversation with Sam. Sam Naes is owner and executive producer of CN Video Productions. Very interesting conversation to be had there. Steve will actually moderate that conversation. And with that said, Steve, the microphone is yours.
Well, great, Marquita. Thank you very much for everything you do for Innovative Business Advisors, and particularly for giving us your Thursday afternoons to come and moderate these webinars. We are so appreciative of all that you do. Well, folks, here we are, Thursday, September 24th, 2020, and this week we've received several questions from clients and several points of feedback as well regarding the Paycheck Protection Program and the forgiveness application of that. So many companies, approximately 15 million companies across the United States, took advantage of this, and a lot of folks are hearing from their lenders directly that they cannot yet apply for forgiveness, or at least the lender is encouraging them not to apply for forgiveness. Just wanted to provide a little bit of an update around that. We actually have heard that from our lender as well, and from multiple lenders in the St. Louis marketplace. What's going on behind the scenes is there is, as probably everybody is aware, a fourth tranche of legislation that is being contemplated on Capitol Hill. And right now the Republicans and the Democrats and the administration, and really I'm thinking of them as three different pieces of this pie, all of them are in somewhat of a disagreement about what that legislation should look like. But we have been privy to the Senate versions, the House versions, and then haven't seen the legislation, but have become aware of the fact that there are now a subset of congressional leaders on the House side. About 60 of them have banded together, and they now have a separate bill that they're calling an emergency bill. The bottom line is that all three of those pieces of legislation include some form of automatic forgiveness for PPP recipients. And this comes from the fact that the banking community is strongly advocating to our congressional leaders that they include blanket forgiveness as part of the next wave of pandemic aid, if you will. And the reason is that it certainly monopolized the banking community when the CARES Act was first released, and the application was very, very simple for people to make in order to get the funds. The forgiveness application is much more complicated, and the bankers are very fearful that if they have to go through and do a manual forgiveness for every one of those loans, that it will just monopolize the banking community for, the foreseeable future. So many banks are saying if your loan amount is $150,000 or less, hold off on filing your forgiveness application until this final piece of legislation is settled. And hopefully we'll have that legislation settled before the election. I would imagine that it would certainly be settled quickly after the election if it doesn't get done beforehand. But remember that if you have a PPP loan, you're in that grace period. So you aren't having to make payments yet. And time, I know everybody wants to put this to bed. They've probably used the money. They've been through the required periods. They have all their documentation together. They're probably ready to get it behind them. But unfortunately, the powers that be and the banking community and the government are not quite ready for it. So sit tight. It's coming. It'll be available. And that's the main update that I've got. In our little town here in O'Fallon, Missouri, the city has come up with a couple of grants, some pandemic aid grants. I would strongly encourage all of our participants, reach out to your city, your county, check on the state websites. These new grants just popped up within the last week, and you want to keep yourself apprised of what's going on in your community for pandemic aid, because this has certainly gone on longer than we all expected it to. So, as you all are well aware, our main theme of this weekly webinar is Survive, Pivot, and Thrive. A lot of businesses are hurt. A lot of businesses have had to change the way they do business and figure out how to pivot and thrive. And us, just like many businesses, have had to learn how to use a new tool and what's become a new verb in our language, and that is called Zooming. And we are using Zoom each week to bring you this webinar series. So we're really honored to have as our guest this week Sam Naes. And Sam has a video production company here in town. She is a professional videographer and does, professional level video, and has transitioned that business like all the rest of us, and had to do more and more work along this platform. And Sam has agreed to come on and graciously give us a significant portion of her time to talk about creative ways to use Zoom as a digital media tool for any business. And Sam, welcome. We're honored to have you. And tell us, start us off. Tell us how in the world did you go from a professional videographer to now you're a Zoom expert?
Well, I'm still a professional videographer, but definitely had to become a Zoom expert. I remember the day that COVID happened, from my perspective, or as I like to refer to it, the day all my clients canceled everything. They made the announcement that there was going to be a stay-at-home order, and it was just phone call after phone call of clients saying, this project we had coming up, we need to cancel, we need to postpone. And at the time, I thought, oh gosh, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month, 6 weeks, it'll be fine. But as it turns out, like you mentioned earlier, it went on for quite a bit longer than that. And it's interesting, the projects that I was supposed to be working on in 2020, we do a lot of travel. And I was supposed to be both in New York and in Chicago this spring, which would not have been a good place for me to be. So thankfully, those got canceled. I have several employees in the area where I would visit them on site. And when you have a stay-at-home order, you can't come in and record. And I didn't really panic at first. And then a friend of mine brought up, we host a podcast of our own, or we did prior to COVID, and we had to cancel it. And a friend of mine said, Mary Kuthais, a friend of mine said, why don't we try doing it over Zoom? And I thought, well, let me look into that. I don't think that would work for a professional podcast, but let me look into it. And then I had a client, an accounting firm, did a webinar on the payroll production program, and he wanted to know if I could edit that for him. And so I started kind of getting into the different things that you could do with Zoom. And I ended up contacting a lot of my clients back and saying, hey, this project that we were supposed to do, why don't we try doing it via Zoom? Let me explain to you how that might work. And little by little, my clients started saying, you know what, let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. And right now in 2020, I want to say probably 70% of the work that CN Video has done is Zoom editing.
It's amazing. It's an amazing transformation. We've been longtime Zoom customers. All of our team are basically work from home, and we've got a couple of joint office locations. So we used other platforms, and about 2 years ago switched over to the Zoom platform because we were having different issues with the other platforms and doing our weekly video calls with our team wherever they happen to be. And so we've used Zoom a lot to do these weekly calls, and we're relatively familiar with it, and began using it for some interviews with our prospective buyer clients and the out-of-town seller clients from time to time. But we really didn't keep, recordings and didn't use the video portion of it, other than the fact of just being able to look each other in the eye, if you will, while we're having a conversation during these particular meetings. So yeah, boy, it's really become quite a versatile tool. Who would have known we'd be here where we are?
Yeah, my first client to actually use it as more than just a communication tool, as more of a marketing or beyond those live types of meetings, was a local credit union. They do regular announcements and interviews. When they have a new employee, they interview that new employee just so that everybody can get to know them across all the branches. The CEO makes announcements. They did what open enrollment is coming up. They made an announcement about open enrollment. And she actually said to me, I don't know how we're going to do this, because you usually come in and you record these for us. And it was interesting, because how we used to do it is I would come to their office and I would record 3 or 4 at a time, because it was cost effective to do it that way. But then sometimes the content would get stale before they had a chance to release the videos. And so I was able to kind of sell them the idea of using Zoom by saying, look, I won't have to do 3 or 4 at a time. When you're ready to do one, we can do one. We can interview people, we can record them, I can clean them up, I can add branding. And they have not only increased the number of videos, video announcements that they've done, but they've lowered their budget.
Lower their budget.
Yeah. Oh, yes, because it's a lot less expensive to edit a Zoom video than it is to haul all of the equipment and lights and microphones out to the client's location. And the content's more fresh. They can literally say, hey, we want to release this on Friday. Can we call in on Wednesday and do the recording? So they're doing, obviously people are doing webinars. And if you have content and you're not recording a webinar and making that content available, then that's something definitely worth looking into. But I think most people have figured that out already. But we have announcements. We have messages that companies are making about the pandemic and about safety and cleanliness of the office. People are doing testimonials and success stories. You can actually talk to one of your clients and ask them how they felt about your services, about working with you, and record it. And now you've got a recording of a testimonial that you can put on your website. So it's not just about having the conversation, it's about creating the recording. You can even use Zoom to record messages without anybody else on the recording, without anybody else on it. If you want to train somebody on how to use a new software or how to find something on your website, you don't have to invite anybody to the Zoom meeting. You can literally open up a Zoom meeting, start recording, start talking, do a screen share, and start demonstrating how to use software, how to find things on your website, stop the recording, and now you've got a recording about whatever announcement that you needed to make. So it's a lot more versatile and useful than I think people are giving it credit for.
Yeah, we did use it in that regard, in terms of we recorded a video. An association contacted us and asked us, an association has a large amount of independent contractors throughout the country that they work with. And they asked us if we would produce a short video for them with the overview for the various aid programs, particularly those highlighting those that were available to independent contractors. So we actually, my partner and I got on and we did a quick Zoom video conversation that we did, and sent that out to them. We didn't have it edited, didn't even think to have it edited at the time, frankly, or anything like that. And it was very, very well received.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just really what you can do with it. So I've kind of made a brief list of some of the things that some of my clients are doing with Zoom. I thought maybe some of your listeners might be interested.
Yeah, walk us down that. It'd be very interesting.
All right, so obviously we have the webinar recordings, and then the messages about pandemic and about safety. testimonials, success stories. We've done those individually and with a group. I'm actually working with an association that is getting some of their best members on a Zoom call to discuss the benefits of being a part of the association. And so it's actually a testimonial success story video, not with just one other person, but with a group of people.
Interesting.
So they can feed off of each other. Conferences, it's kind of a no-brainer now. It's interesting, another association I was working with was talking about how they're having some difficulties because they have an upcoming conference and it's not live, and how to get people to come, and, you know, what are the benefits? And I said, you know, you've got one huge benefit in that every single session is being recorded and can be made available to the people who register to come. But not only can you do that, but you can, in order to entice people to come, you can do pre-presentation interviews with the speaker, just little 2-minute teasers about their topic. Just record that conversation and make it available, no editing required. You can do post interviews with people who attended the conference and get testimonials about the conference. Announcements, a lot of companies are using these for announcements for either for their employees or for clients and customers. Again, we had one that did open enrollment. We have meet the new team member, a message from the CEO or from HR or from management. Any manager, person in HR can record a relevant message to the company, to all of their employees, to their customers using Zoom. You know, it can be just their face or a PowerPoint slide. Sales and giveaways, new product launches, holiday wishes. We've got the holidays coming up. You can record a nice holiday wish for your customers, for your employees, and make that available on your website, on social media, sent out through email. Email autoresponders now. People are doing interesting things using Zoom to create video autoresponders when you're out of the office. Website demonstrations, how to apply, how to request a tour of the website, where to find things on the website, how to use software for employees or for your customers. Because you're allowed to share the screen and you can actually explain something to someone while you're showing them how to do it on the screen, and you've got a recording of it, that can be extremely powerful.
Yeah, it can be. We actually has the whiteboard function as well, and we've just begun playing with that for some of our coaching calls. And that's relatively new to us, and we are not experts in that, but there does seem to be a lot of flexibility and a lot of additional tools in here that I guess are not readily visible to you until you start digging into some of the menus.
Right. Zoom is all about better ways of communicating, of getting your message across, about getting people to see and hear and understand. And it's got that record option. So the ideas are limitless, what you can do with it. If you have, and I think, Steve, when we talked about this earlier, you guys are doing some minimal editing. And I think a lot of people do. A lot of people open, gosh, I only use the professional tool, so I'm not as familiar. The Apple's consumer video editing tool that people use, iMovie.
Yep.
Yeah, some people will bring them into iMovie and kind of clean them up a little bit. And one of the things you could do with that is you can also overlay. So if you want to do a demonstration and you take your cell phone and shoot a video of you doing the demonstration or of whatever it is you want to show, you can go into iMovie and just overlay that footage over what you're saying, kind of get a little bit fancy with the editing. So
I think I know the only editing we do is we just take the dead space out of the beginning and the end and try and just keep the middle part of it wide open. So I wouldn't say we're editing. I think we're just taking the dead air to make better use of our viewers' time when they go to our YouTube channel and watch the replay. But from an editing standpoint, is it as versatile as creating, you know, what you would have traditionally done in your normal video world, or what are some of the differences between what you may have done in the past and what you're doing with Zoom today?
That's actually a really good question. The downside is obviously you're not getting the video quality. The audio quality can be somewhat iffy. You have less control of the room and what people do because you're not there. But Honestly, the credit union that I was telling you about earlier, they've started really liking what we're doing with these, and they're even talking about, when things go back to normal, continuing to use Zoom because of the convenience, because you can get people together no matter where they are. And I got to tell you, cameras, microphones, lighting is getting so much better than it was when people first started using Zoom. Most people have become more comfortable with Zoom, and they've got the right equipment. The things that you can do with it, it's really interesting. When you record a Zoom, you've got each individual person that's talking, and when you edit, if you're using the professional editing software, you can actually separate those into separate layers. So I can make a layer that's me, a layer that's you, a layer that's Marquita, and I can turn them off and on, move them around, make them bigger, smaller, put borders around them, put branded backgrounds behind it. And so, like when you watch the news in the morning and you see somebody talking, it cuts over and you've got 2 or 3 people on the screen, you can make a Zoom video look like that. So there's really a lot of flexibility. You can add lighting, you can color correct, so you can make it look good. The biggest issues that you have with Zoom video is when you have network problems or audio issues, when people freeze up.
Yeah, we have seen that occasionally.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Or if somebody's got a squeaky microphone, then that happens a lot if somebody's using their cell phone. And if you've got your cell phone set up, if you're not using AirPods or some type of microphone, you're just using the microphone in the cell phone. If you set it down to where the microphone is up against a hard surface, that squeaking noise is actually echo. And so, like, oftentimes if you hear that, if you tell them to readjust the way their phone is sitting or put something soft underneath it, sometimes that will help. But you get, I've heard them sometimes where you get what sounds like a snorting noise. And I don't know where that comes from, but somebody's microphone is making obnoxious snorting noises or squeaking noises. And so what we recommend that you do is, one of the settings that we talked about is you can record each individual speaker onto a separate file. So after the fact, if somebody's dog started barking or microphone was squeaking, you can actually, when you're editing, turn their volume down and then only turn it up when they say something, and eliminate all the noise that way. So you can make it look and sound pretty good, but you know, obviously it's not like having a professional camera, microphone, and lighting.
Yeah, we just had that this morning. We were on a Zoom call with a company this morning, and there was a dog in the background that went off in the client's office while we were on the call. So that stuff happens these days.
And Sam and Steve, if you don't mind, if I can sort of interject here a little bit, because I find this conversation beyond interesting. It is extremely interesting to me. And Sam, I'm going to share a little bit of background with you on a product that I use, and I really would like to get feedback from you. I am not a professional in any manner, but I'm a techie. And you know, techies tend to dabble into this area. So I purchased, I'm subscribed to, not purchased, but subscribed to the Adobe suite. It's called Creative Cloud, and it's specifically Premiere Pro is the one that I'm using. And one of the things that I found is a challenge to me, for as much as I consider myself a techie, is that there is so much to know and so much to understand that I find myself thinking, oh my God, will somebody just take this away from me? And I'm torn between the value of having the tool that I'm subscribed to and trying to do things on my own versus using a professional firm as you are. Talk to me a little bit about that and what you find that clients are able to do on their own versus use with a firm like yours.
I think if you're not a professional video editor, it was very brave of you to take on Premiere. Because it is, it's very complicated. It has a lot of features. Some people are doing some pretty incredible things with tools like iMovie, which is a lot more intuitive for someone who's not familiar. The advice I would give is, it really depends on the whole time versus cost versus quality. Obviously, there are going to be things that a professional can do that you would have to take way too much time to learn how to do. But if you're if you're somewhat comfortable with it, first of all, there are videos out there. There are tutorials that you can take. I recommend, if you're having trouble getting started with Premiere, go out to YouTube and search for how to do this in Premiere, how to do that in Premiere, introduction to the Premiere interface. And that'll help get you started. And if you can do it yourself, then more power to you. Just be mindful of how much time you're spending on getting it done, because it takes a lot of time to learn how to do these things. Once you know how to do it, then, you know, that's great. You can do it quickly, but.
It does take a lot of time. And you know, the thing that surprised me when we first started doing this was just the amount of time that it takes to render the footage after the fact, right? So we've got a separate iMac that does that, where we just cut the front time off and the back time off of these webinars, and it seems to take the Mac as long to reproduce the finished product. I mean, I've done many of these myself, and I typically do it after dinner and then leave it and let it run, because it can run. I've seen it run for hours, right? And then I'll come back in first thing in the morning, and it'll say, you know, finished, ready to go, and then boom, we send it over to or actually Terry LaCroix on our team actually takes it and does all the postings on YouTube and so forth. So that's how all that shakes out.
That could be a real heartbreaker when you watch the final video and realize that you've done something wrong and you have to re-render it.
And I'm sure you probably have.
That is all about, you need a solid state drive and a lot of memory. If you're using like a gaming computer, that's going to be better for video editing.
No, this is an out of the box iMac. Maybe that's why it takes so long. But again, we had never envisioned that we would be doing that. That's why we started having this conversation with you about how do we rely on the expert that can really take it out and polish it and make it much better. So
well, and there are things that you can do that will help it to not require so much editing. First of all, I wanted to go back to, you had mentioned earlier being on a call with someone and their dog started barking. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things, that's definitely one of the silver linings, I think, that has come out of this whole COVID-19 mess, is that I think communication is more personal. I can remember having conversations with clients way back when, and my dog would start barking, and I would mute the phone, and I'd be, you know, because I was working from home that day, and I'd mute the phone, and oh my gosh, did they hear? I'd be very apologetic. And now you're on Zoom calls with people, someone's dog barks and everybody smiles and continues the conversation. I've had my dog jump up in my lap during business meetings, and the client, their dog, they'll pull their dog up, and their dog is now saying hello to my dog, you know, during the meeting. So I think people have kind of what used to be quote unquote unprofessional has become a little bit more personal, a little bit more acceptable, and it allows people to get to know. I mean, you're literally looking at the inside of my home in my basement as I'm speaking with you, which is something that wasn't the case before. So people have become a lot more forgiving about what they're seeing, about noises. And I think in some respects, we're getting to know each other on a more personal level because of the children and the dogs and the household things that happen while you're on the conversation. But there are some things that you can do. And Steve, you guys are actually doing a lot of these. You're doing a really good job. Number one is, well, there are three things that you really need to be mindful of when you're recording a Zoom. It's how you and your guests appear, how you and your guests sound, and how the overall content of what you're recording is, if it's easily consumable by your audience. So sound, extremely important, and you guys do a good job of that. You've got microphones plugged in. There are, I very seldom recommend using what's in your laptop or on your cell phone. Microphones are always a good way to go. I think, Steve, last time we spoke, you even brought up somebody had recommended calling in instead of using the internet when you're on a call. These are things you just want to test beforehand. You can get on a Zoom by yourself or with a friend, a coworker, and test it. Try it with a microphone, try it without a microphone. What sounds better? Try it from your cell phone. But there are things that you can do to get that good audio quality.
Well, we credit Marquita for this. Marquita's the one that's,
Oh,
started with
techie.
the headset. I copied her. She's the one that's created our backgrounds for us. So Marquita's the one that's kept us as current as we are. She makes us all look good, is what we say inside. Yeah.
Well, Sam, I'll share with you, I feel like I'm a Zoom pioneer because I've been doing this for quite some time. Most of my clients are outside of the St. Louis area. So I began meeting with them via Zoom over 3 years ago. I mean,
Oh,
quite some time ago. And I can tell you, and I remember the days when we didn't have green screen and a variety of other things. And subsequently, what I have learned by working with Zoom is that I have asked for specific improvements, and that is, if you can log into Zoom, you can use green screen now. That's been a feature that they've rolled out to everyone. I happen to be in my bedroom now, so you're seeing a dark corner of my bedroom. I normally work from a studio in my basement, but the studio is being used by someone else in the family today. But I have been able, for very low cost, I've been able to purchase the light kits that are the indirect umbrella type reflective lights. So that is set up downstairs with a green screen and the reflective lights, which is a much better lighting situation than what you're seeing right now. And those are very inexpensive. I paid less than $70 for the whole kit on Amazon. So those are quite easy to do.
well, and I'll tell you what, for people that don't have a studio like that, a couple of simple tips. Like, I'm not using any special lighting. I am in my basement and I'm not using any special lighting whatsoever. And I could be a little bit brighter, but make sure that your light source is in front of you and not behind you. I've seen people that are sitting at their desk and they've got a window behind them. That is going to make you appear darker. And I think probably one of the reasons, Marquita, why yours is coming across dark is you've got a window, but you've got your curtains closed, but you've got a window behind you. If you turn your computer around, turn your laptop around so that you're facing the window instead of having it behind you, brightens up your whole face.
Well, I have to confess, Sam, I've got a mess over that side. So that's why we're facing this direction.
You're controlling the view.
I'm controlling the view.
Priorities. And even just a desk lamp, just making sure that the lighting is more in front of you than behind you, and even just a simple desk lamp on behind your monitor or in front of you is really all you need for good lighting. It can look a little bit odd if the window is on the side. Like if you're sitting and you've got the window on one side and not on the other, you'll look much brighter on one side than on the other side. So again, either turn and face the window or just put a light, just a lamp, any old lamp, kind of on the other side in front of you to offset it a little bit. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm the example of that because I've got the window over my left shoulder here, and that's why it's much brighter on one side of my face than the other side.
Which is okay. Yours looks pretty good.
Steve and Sam, if I can now, just to interrupt and remind our participants, if you have questions, go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A dialogue, and we will begin fielding those questions shortly.
And then another thing that you can do to kind of improve how you look on the video is the positioning. You see a lot of people where, they're kind of like this, which makes it awkward, or, they're way back here, they're down here. You want to make sure that you're somewhat consistent with the other people as well. You want to be kind of centered with just a little bit of space above your head. And you want to be about from, shoulders on up and centered and facing the camera. You make sure that your camera's not too low, because that is such an unflattering angle to have it angled up at you so that people can literally see up your nose. When you're talking, a lot of people do that. They have it sitting on a desktop and it's a little bit lower and they angle it up. It's just not flattering. Raise it up a little bit, and you want the camera kind of straight on and with you centered and head and shoulders. And if you have that consistently with everyone, then it makes for a much nicer video without any editing.
You know, Sam, the piece that you just presented a minute ago is so universally needed. And I've shared with Steve before, and I'll share with you, my husband's firm is a human resources firm, and a key part of that is career transition. And one of the things that we do in that business is coach people on interviews. Well, now all interviews are virtual interviews, you know, Zoom based are another tool. And it's one of the key things we talk about in prep for the interview. It used to be, what are you wearing and how are you dressing to go in for the face-to-face interview, and what are you projecting? Now the issue is much more on the screen or the video. What are you projecting? How is your screen positioned? How is the lighting? You know, what is in the background, things of that nature. So I think I will probably clip and use the piece that you just gave in some of those training classes, because it's spot on relative to interview prep also.
Yeah. It's funny, you talked about how you would dress for the interview used to be the most important thing. You gave your dirty little secret about the window. My dirty little secret is I'm dressed up from the waist up. I'm wearing sweatpants.
Yeah, my wife was kind enough to share on Facebook one day how I had my white button-down shirt on, sitting at my home office on a Zoom conference with I don't remember who, and I had my my shorts on down below, right? My just beat around the house shorts. So yeah.
I've wondered, they joke about it on TV commercials. I wonder how many people have been in office meetings where they've stood up or jumped up for some reason and had on boxer shorts or pajama bottoms or something. I'm sure it's happened.
Hey, I literally called one of our clients who's in the apparel manufacturing business here in the United States, one of the very few companies that does a pretty good amount of leisure apparel. And I said, is it possible to make a nice, comfortable golf shirt with a button-down collar that, you know, from the neck up looks like you're wearing a collared shirt? Because I'm an old guy. I come from the Tom Watson IBM days where, you know, we got to wear a white shirt.
Well, Sam, we have our first question posed here by one of our participants, and I'm going to throw this your way now and see what your thoughts are on this. And Joshua says, I've seen advice that says that audio is more important than video, as in great audio is more professional than great video. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Well, let me qualify that. I agree with it under most circumstances. The content is the most important part of the video. Whenever we produce a professional video, we always script first. We always determine what's the content first, and then we decide visuals that support the content, because the message is the most important thing. The visuals support the message. If somebody can't hear the video at all, there's just no point in watching it. If it's a little blurry, if the visuals aren't great, but they can hear it, they're going to get more information. Now, with that being said, social media video needs to be done to where they don't have to have the volume on at all, because oftentimes people are scrubbing through social media and they don't hear the video at all. They see it. They have to opt to turn it on. So in that respect, it kind of changes things a little bit. There are places where the video is more important when, like, you're giving a demonstration on how to do something, and they really need to see what you're doing more so than hear what you're saying. But as a general rule, yes, audio is more important than the video.
One other question for you, Sam. As you see your industry moving forward, post-COVID, what do you think the post-COVID environment will be? Will there be a return back to what we saw before COVID, or do you think we've defined a totally new paradigm now?
You mean as far as corporate video?
Yes.
Corporate video production?
Yes.
I've had these conversations with a lot of my clients, and it's going to be kind of a mix, at least the people that I'm working with. The client that did the regular announcements, I believe that they're going to continue to do most of their announcements using Zoom, because it's worked out well, because it's convenient, because we're able to make it look and sound good, and they've purchased microphones and cameras and everything they need to make them look good. I think there's going to be a lot more people using Zoom for recordings and for messages, especially because it's become more acceptable. Not only have we gotten better at it and it's gotten better, but it's become more accepted. But there are some things, for example, an association that I work with, this is the one that would have us travel. They've got 7,000 members of the association, and they have us go from city to city and capture little 2-minute introductory videos for each of their members. But we only hit the major cities. We go where they have office locations. And we do 1 to 2 to 3 a month. And when all of this happened and they canceled, and I recommended using Zoom, their initial response was, no, 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 no. We want these to look professional. We don't want some to be more professional and then some to be done via Zoom. It's not fair to those people. And then as things moved forward and people got used to using Zoom, conversation now is, well, let's give it a try. So what they've decided is they're going to offer both options. There's going to be a lower cost option where you can have yours done via Zoom, and we just edit it to make it look professional, but we're still going to hit some of the major cities and do some of them live in person for people that want that level of quality. So I think that this is a new product, a new way of doing things, and I think there's no reason to leave it behind once everybody goes back to work, if everybody goes back to work. I understand there probably will still be a lot of people working from home even after all of this is over, but it's just a new option. And I think it's going to be a mix.
Sam, also touch, if you will, on using cell phone video, because now, you know, we all are carrying around video cameras in our pockets, and that's kind of a hallmark of the modern times. And we personally, you know, on our team, a lot of us use our cell phones for Zoom on a very regular basis. So we have, you know, we have many members of our team that sign into our weekly meetings on their cell phone. And I've done several of those meetings myself while I'm driving down the road in the car, not with the camera on, but I think even you and I had a Zoom meeting, you know, when I was in the car one day. So talk about that and provide some tips and tricks, if you will, for what you see in that regard as well.
Yeah, and we're talking about a couple of different things. Obviously, you can do Zoom recordings using your cell phone, and sometimes the audio and oftentimes the video is even better from a cell phone than it is from a laptop.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, some of these phones have nice cameras.
Well, I guess that's the feature that the phones have really stressed for the last few years, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, and the limitation becomes Zoom instead of the actual camera. You get better footage from your camera than when it's recorded on Zoom.
Interesting.
But a couple of key things if you're going to be doing a Zoom meeting and using your cell phone is get an actual cell phone stand, because too many people have tried, I'm going to rest it against a pile of books, you know, and it slips or it slides or it's not adjusted quite right. There are so many stands that you can buy for less than $20 on Amazon that are floor stands or table stands that hold a cell phone. Definitely use one of those. You can get a little lavalier, a little clip-on microphone that'll plug right into your cell phone, or use AirPods work pretty well, any type of microphone. But cell phones for video, that's also something that's kind of interesting. We had a little bit of a test case. One of my clients was in a program that was offering grants to local small businesses. It was a COVID relief fund. And they were going around to nonprofit organizations and small businesses and giving them checks for $500, $1,000 just as part of a grant. And they contacted me because they wanted to do a social media video about this. And they wanted me to come out and record. And they were talking about the logistics of, well, we're going to be going to their business and it's going to be their employees. It's going to be our employees. It's going to be your camera people. How are we going to do social distancing with this? How is this going to work? And they ended up, they came this close to canceling the video, because they're like, we don't know how to do this. And I said, well, why don't you have some of your employees that are going to be there just capture what they need with cell phones, and then we can edit that footage. And we had a conversation with them, and I gave them some simple tips about, you know, we used to say back in the day, if you're going to shoot your own cell phone footage, we'd say, you know, hold your phone horizontally, not vertically. But now that's changed, and it's more a matter of knowing where you're going to use it. Do you want it to be square? Do you want it to be horizontal? Do you want it to be vertical? Maybe record some in each direction, depending on what platform you're going to be using it for. But I always tell people, think outside the box. One of the things I told them when they went to do these check presentations is they said, well, we're going to get a picture of the person holding the check, and then we're going to get some footage of the reveal when they realize what's going on. And I said, oh, get more than that. Get when your team shows up and you're out in the parking lot planning on going inside, somebody turn on the camera and capture that. As you're sneaking in with the gigantic check, somebody capture that. You know, you've got to get these other little bits and pieces. And also you want up close, and you want more of a wide angle. So it's easier for, a lot of people don't realize when you're shooting cell phone footage, they don't see everything that you're seeing. They're only seeing what your camera is seeing. And if you're too close up, they don't really get a feel for the surroundings. You know, when you watch your favorite television program, they always show the outside of the hospital or the home or the office building before they cut to inside, so that the viewer gets a feel for where, it's called the establishing shot. It establishes where they are. So I always tell people, when you do things like this, step back and get wide shots and have somebody getting the close-up so that you can use both of them. What's interesting about this is, and you don't have to be an expert like Marquita, who's bravely diving into using Premiere. Even if you're using iMovie or a more simple tool, oftentimes you can record a video using Zoom. You can record some footage on your cell phone, and then you can go in and put them together. You can overlay. And if you can't, then certainly we can. But they ended up using their own cell phones to capture their own footage for this event. And the video was spectacular. They loved it so much, they had me cut a 30-second spot for a TV commercial. Using
out of their cell phone video.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Interesting, interesting. So Sam, I do have one other comment here.
Okay.
And I guess I'm a little bit square, so to speak. I don't quite get it. But anyway, Daniel makes a comment, and he says, be square if you want to be everywhere. And his comment was posted at the point that you were talking about portrait versus landscape.
Yeah.
So I think it may have something to do with that. Do you want to make some comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, really, there are three major shapes right now. You've got vertical, horizontal, and square. And I think what he's referring to is that, you know, square can really work either way. But it's, you know, I try to get a little bit of everything. A lot of it is about planning and knowing where you're going to use it, because sometimes you want to use that vertical, sometimes you want to use horizontal, and sometimes you want to go square. The difficult part is if you shoot it horizontally and you need it vertically, then you're going to have to really zoom in. You're going to have to crop out. You might not get everything that you needed. So you just kind of want to just be aware of if you're, what you might be losing if you had to crop it a different direction. If you shoot it horizontally and you want it to be vertical or you want it to be square, know that you're going to have to lose what's on the right and left side or either side of it. Know that it's going to have to be reshaped. So really planning. But yeah, square is becoming more popular.
Excellent. See, we have an informed audience. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So so it's fascinating, Sam. You can basically take, as long as you've got some audio files and or video files, right? You can mix and match. What I just heard you say is you can use cell phone video and match it with Zoom video and create a new video that seamlessly integrates the two, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what we do. That's a lot of what we do, and anybody can. That's one of the reasons why I say it's important to record each individual on a separate audio file, because you can control that. You can add video, you can add pictures, you can add slides. You can do it. You can either do this while you're in Zoom or you can do it outside of Zoom. Put it together. We've mixed professional footage with cell phone footage. We've mixed Zoom videos with professional footage. Yeah, you can mix any combination.
So I don't know whether we've got a particular client that you and I spoke about earlier before we went live this afternoon, and we've recommended that they get in contact with you. And basically their situation, let me just paint their situation. I'd love to have you comment on it for the benefit of our audience as a whole.
Okay.
Their situation is such that they've been severely affected by the pandemic. They're serving primarily folks within the healthcare fields, and the vast majority of their clients have basically locked the doors. And unless you are a healthcare immediate service provider, a nurse, a doctor, et cetera, you're just not allowed in those situations. So obviously their business has been severely affected because they can't deliver their service. But their service is really useful and can be very useful in this lockdown period. So basically what they are in the process of doing is they're pivoting their whole business model, where they're now talking about taking an in-person service and doing a whole series of videos and then delivering this service in these healthcare environments via video. And obviously we have recommended that they talk to you about that. But can you talk about, I mean, for them, they were a completely in-person business, and now they're having to figure out, how do they serve a client who they physically can't get in front of anymore?
Yeah, that can be really tricky. A couple of points to make about that. One is, it's all in the planning. If you're going to do something like this, you have to plan. And it's a lot easier to switch from in-person to video if you've been doing in-person, if you have the routine down. We used to, before COVID, pre-COVID, when a business would approach us and say, we've been doing this live, and oftentimes it's training or onboarding, where they're doing it live and it's taking a lot of time and they want to switch over to video. My recommendation was typically, I wouldn't go video with the whole thing. There are certain parts that can be video, but there's always a benefit to having live as well. And so it's a matter of going through and saying, what do we want to do in person? What do we want to do live? And then where can we take a break and show a video, or they do it on their own time? They can watch it as many times as they want. Where is that the most beneficial? Now, post-COVID or during COVID, I think you might want to consider a combination of Zoom and video. Because
so you get the live component while you also have the video structure.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Video serves a great purpose when it comes to showing, demonstrating, teaching, where someone can watch over and over again. They can see the visuals. You can have things come up on the screen that help them to understand what you're saying. But I don't think video cannot completely replace live. So depending, and I don't know what it is that they're doing, what the service was that they were providing, but it's usually going to be a mix of some person-to-person interaction and some video. And it's determining which parts are best suited for video and which parts are suited best for continuing to do in person or over Zoom.
So I know you know a lot about this as well, and I know you're a real expert on the training and onboarding stuff. We've done a lot of video training in the past, where you're doing some role playing and you're doing video training so that you can do situation analysis and so forth, and help people really understand the situations that they may be put in, right?
Yeah.
So I think you just provided a little hint of the differentiation between the two. So I'd ask you to expand on that a little bit more, because I think, that was a very cumbersome process to have to do in the past. Now it's somewhat easier, isn't it?
To create the training, what's part
yeah, to create all the training videos and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is a fine line between where you require interaction and where video can be beneficial. And I love to tell the story about, this was a television program that I saw several years ago. It was one of those candid camera type shows where they would put people into these situations. I think there's a show out now called What Would You Do that's very similar, where some of the people are actors and some of the people are poor, unsuspecting citizens that don't know what's going on. And they put them in very awkward situations, and they don't know that they're on camera, and it's basically to record how they handle the situation. And they did this with a group of children, with the parents in a trailer next door watching the camera feed. And they were learning about gun safety, and they were telling the children in a classroom, what to do if they see a gun. And they had a dry erase board, and they said, go get an adult. And they'd say, repeat after me, what do you do when you see a gun? And the kids would say, all as a group would say, don't touch it. And then what do? Go get an adult. You know, they did all that. And then they said, good job, kids. Now go in the next room. We've got candy, soda, ice cream, help yourselves. And of course they had a fake gun hidden in the room,
Which somebody eventually found.
for the children to find, right? And they had a camera on to see what the kids would do right after leaving this training. And so the kid walks over and sees the gun and calls another kid over, and the second child comes over, and what does he do? Picks it up and starts playing with it. And they just came out of the classroom. So then they did test case B. Different kids, same classroom, same lesson, except they showed a video of a child seeing a gun and saying, don't touch it, go get an adult, and then the other kid going to get the adult. And then they put them in the same room with the candy and the soda and the ice cream, same situation. And when the child found the gun, he said, don't touch it. The other child said, I'm going to go get an adult. And that's what they did. So seeing that visual, seeing a demonstration of behavior or an example of what you're supposed to do can be more powerful than communicating directly with someone. So that's an example of where video is a really good use of training, but the interaction, the answering of questions, that you have to be there for.
Makes sense.
Right.
Excellent.
Well, look, it's getting to be near the top of the hour, so I'm going to start wrapping up. But before we wrap up, I have one question in the Q&A dialogue that I thought I'd go ahead and pose to you, Sam. Mary Beth asks, can you edit or add to cell phone videos that you've recorded to Vimeo? To the Vimeo platform. So essentially, she's taken a cell phone, she's got this video up on Vimeo. What can she do with it now in terms of editing and how?
Just to better understand the question, I mean, obviously any video can be edited if you actually have the video. Is she saying that she no longer has a copy on her cell phone, that it's just up on Vimeo? The question,
she's not being that clear, and we'll see if she adds to the question to clarify that. Personally, I think of Vimeo as just a storage tool. Mm-hmm. It could be like Google Docs, it could be like Dropbox, it could be YouTube. It's just a place to store, correct?
Well, yes and no. Google Docs and Dropbox or iCloud, wherever you're storing video clips, stores them in their raw format. When you upload a video to Vimeo or YouTube or any social media platform, it automatically runs compression to make it easier to watch over the internet. And so if you upload a video to Vimeo or YouTube and then you download it from Vimeo or YouTube, you have a lower quality video than what you started with.
Okay, so what she's clarifying, Mary Beth just put a comment in, and she says the video is still on her phone. Vimeo is the platform she uses to send it to others. So that's the link that she sends to others.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, that can be edited. Is she asking how to get it off of her phone to edit? Because, I mean, there are very simple editing tools oftentimes that come with your cell phone that you can edit right there on your cell phone. Vimeo, I know YouTube and I think Vimeo offer a little bit of editing functionality once it's been uploaded. But like if you're talking about having it professionally edited, turned into something else or mixed with other things, then it's a matter of just sending that clip to an editor. Or I wouldn't recommend using Vimeo to do that, because like I said, then once you have it up on Vimeo and then if they're able to download it from Vimeo, then you're going to have a reduced quality. It's better if you're able to use something like Google Docs or Dropbox.
So is it clear to say then, Sam, if she were working with you and she had recorded this on her cell phone and uploaded it to Vimeo, you would prefer to have the content sent from the version on the cell phone for your editing, not the Vimeo version?
Yeah, that would certainly be better. I mean, it depends on how it was uploaded to Vimeo, and it may have gotten better. It's certainly workable. We have before had people send us links to Vimeo and YouTube and say, can you edit this video? First of all, from my perspective, it's more of a licensing and legal rights question. My first question is this your video? Do we have legal rights for me to download it and edit it? Because I have people sending me other people's YouTube videos and saying, you know, can you pull this in and edit it with my content? And it's like, well, do I have the capability of doing that? The answer is yes, but
we have permission.
Exactly, that's not something we can do. But if she owns it, then absolutely, if we can get it directly from the cell phone, that would be better. But if it's up on Vimeo,
Yeah.
that's certainly workable.
Okay, so Mary Beth, I'm going to consider your question answered because that last one simply said, yes, it can be edited from that source. Okay, great. Well, look, let's start to wrap up. I've got 4 o'clock straight up. So we're going to wrap up the way we normally do, and that is I'll give each one of you an opportunity to make last comments, and then we'll say goodbye to our audience. So Steve, I'm going to give you the first shot, and Sam, you'll get the absolute last word today.
All right.
So Steve, any last comments you'd like to make before we close the video or close the webinar?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sam, first off, again, thank you very much for so graciously giving us some of your time today to come in and provide some real expert advice and guidance about this. I would say to our audience, it is amazingly reasonable what the editing side of it involves. So the professional editors, there's almost, you know, nothing that can't be done. You guys work magic in that regard. So there's just a huge range of possibilities that are there. And we're very thankful for all that you do. I mean, everybody's carrying these video cameras around with them now. So I think you're in a very ripe marketplace. I imagine your business is just going to continue to grow like a weed, and you do great work. And again, Sam, thank you very much for giving us your time today. We're very appreciative of that.
Okay, Steve. Now, Sam, it's your opportunity. Any last thoughts, words you'd like to leave with our audience today?
Absolutely. First of all, Steve, thanks for having me. This has been fun. It's been a great conversation. And to the audience, what I'd like to say is get creative. You've got a cell phone with a camera in it. You've got Zoom. You can do a screen share. Think about ways that you can use it. So not just the things that we've talked about, but think outside of the box, get creative. If you have any questions, if you get stuck, if there's anything that I can help you with, reach out to me. My phone number is on the screen. It's 314-843-3663. It's 314-VIDEO-ME, very easy to remember. If you need some help with editing, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Okay, Sam, thank you so much. And then to all of our participants, again, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again next Thursday. Look to receive an email from us within the next 24 hours that will have a recording of this particular webinar along with links to the slides that were used today. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday, 3 o'clock. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.